Well, greetings everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of the Inworld Review. It is the 21st of October. How did that happen? Already? The year 2018. And yes, this basically is the show you didn't get last week. Go figure. Right. Anyway, this is where we look at news, chat, and everything about what's going on in virtual worlds, inhabited virtual worlds and stuff, and their related social medias, which I'll make a point of that this week, and yeah, general kind of stuff, and. Next to me, on my right, is my regular partner here, James Outloud, who's also multitasking on all our cameras and things, and is saving. You'd be glad to know that I am not trying to do the same thing at the same time. Welcome, James.
Oh, thank you, Mel. I'm very happy to be here.
Okay, next to James, we have we've got two old friends of the show here today, but the first of them, of course, is Leah Lobo. Ever recognisable over there. Leah is from Harmony Farms, isn't it? And also from the Open Sim Community Convention, and all over the place is Leah. So welcome, Leah.
Hey, thank you, Mal.
And next to me, yes, on my other side, we have Rhiannon Chatnoir, sometimes known as Joyce Betancourt. She is also with OpenSimulator.org, the OSCC Open Sim Community Conference, and that, in fact, being the first thing on our sort of chat agenda for today. So, welcome, Rhiannon.
Thanks, Mal. Good to be here.
Yeah, and you can be sure that I'll be calling you Joyce within 5 seconds.
Oh, feel free.
Feel free. Just a word of warning to our viewers. If I'm talking to Joyce, I'm also talking to Rhiannon and vice versa. So you get the idea. Leah is no such problem. I only know her as Leah. Right. Well, sort of. Okay, let's get on with it. Not wasting time with me being stupid and silly and informal and trying to put you all at ease, because you don't need to be at ease. Just seeing us talking heads on your screen, that's enough, isn't it? Right, okay, well, particularly welcome again to Leah and Joyce, Rhiannon, the Open Simulator Community Conference. This is an annual event that takes place on the well, it's actually a grid, Open Simulator grid that's actually called Open Simulator Community Conference, and it's hypergrid enabled, as is much on OpenSim. So, in a sense, its topics range from the news from the core developers about changes to the operating system of the virtual worlds, basically over the last year, or what's coming up, but also it extends out to the the hypergrid, because the hypergrid is like it's the thing that actually makes OpenSim's landmass greater than some of the bigger virtual reality games like Second Life. We don't have as many people in that landmass, but we have a far greater landmass, and the very big differences there. But the community conference, in many ways aims to bring together as a sort of umbrella, all that stuff. Now, I'm trying to think of the best person. I've described it a bit. I'm going to send to Joyce first, because Joyce, without getting too much onto it, can probably describe it a little bit more better and what's going on. Then I'll move back to Leah for her take on it.
Sure. So first off, this year's Open Simulator Community Conference is December 8th and 9th. Similar weekend to time of year to what it was last year. But I, on my end of things, I also co-founded and run Avacon, which is a nonprofit that focuses around virtual worlds, including things like Open Simulator. So initially, this was set up to the Open Simulator Community Conference, or OSCC, as we often refer to it, was organized when Avacon went to the core developers and sort of saw a need to get the developers and the users together. So at its base, it's kind of that, but there's certainly, and Lear could probably break down just the content a bit more, but it's certainly the conference features not only presentations about the technology behind Open Simulator and the core as it is, but then also users like many of us on the couch who and others who do interesting things, whether that be educational or business focused, or are content creators or social related things. So we get everybody together. Anybody can present in the community, so you don't have to feel that you have to be um, an educator or some sort of thing like that. And we take proposals from the community, and then we set up a schedule, and we also encourage others to kind of have social events during that weekend as well. And we get the community to volunteer, and so in essence it's this community driven event focusing around Open Simulator and the other technologies and tools that kind of interface with it. So
Right. Okay, well, good. The next question to Leah, of course, is what's happening in America. At the moment, we have the call for proposals has gone out. In other words, we're a few weeks away from deciding who's going to be doing what, as it were, and actually publishing an agenda. What else is going on your side, Leah?
Well, it's mostly talking to speakers and planning. Planning all the backstage things that we're thinking of, including asking to see what is the community interested in. I mean, this year we have opportunities to offer different kinds of events. Like, are they interested in an arts show? Are they interested in a fashion show? All different kinds of creative and business and technical and education and experiential opportunities. And then we have some before the conference kinds of events that are coming up too. So there's some specials that we're planning as well.
Great. One of the features the last couple of years, of course, on the Sunday has been the special OCC edition of the Hypergrid Safari. Now, most people, I think, know that we no longer run the Hypergrid Safari. So it's sort of absent at the moment, for want of a better word, and I and others can't do it on our own. The magic of Thursday is needed for these things. But there are still sort of plans to run something like that on the Sunday, so that because a lot of people, they turn up at this event annually, and no doubt they turn up at other events, relating to the metaverse, virtual worlds, or whatever, or even Open Sim throughout the year. But they turn up at this one kind of annually, and everybody congregates in the same place. But it's traditionally it's more a meeting point of things like developers, educators, and people with best practices to show than it has been the the social tribes. But with the Hypergrid Safari and various other things that have been on in the last couple of years, the remit, as it were, has become to show off a great deal more of the Open Sim and the Hypergrid than possibly at one time it did. And of course, this means marrying that kind of, how shall I say, the entertainment users who entertain themselves in a whole variety of ways, with the more serious users who maybe use it in the workplace, or just working on projects, using the environment to try and break the limits of the environment, kind of thing. So, do you actually feel you're addressing these multiple strands of, a potential audience now? Have you become more aware of that?
I mean, certainly, as I said before, like anybody can submit a proposal, and there's been, and it's kind of ebbed and flowed between the years we've had it. I think this is what, the 5th or 6th OSCC
since 2013.
Yeah, since 2013. Yeah, so certainly, it varies from year to year. In the beginning, we had like multiple content streams going on at the same time, which is great in some ways, right? We had like multiple tracks happening at once. There was lots of content, but it meant a lot of folks couldn't kind of cross-pollinate, right? And some of that idea that the social users and the artists and the content creators and the anybody who might be using it from a commercial business sense or an educational, like they were sort of siloed off. And though that was good in some ways because they could go deep, they couldn't really pollinate and I think there's a lot of power in that. So So certainly we encourage folks to submit proposals from across the swath. There are also, as you said, I mean, you brought up the hypergrid tour. We will have some version of that. There's some folks that are still running hypergrid tours that we hope to kind of engage with, and there's also some orgs like the Community Virtual Library that are trying to put together a resource library about a resource center for hypergrid. So getting those folks together to do that, and we do have like folks can submit other events that they want to have kind of in the off hour times that weekend, and even before, like the days preceding and the days coming after the weekend of the conference. So that way, if folks want to also have like their own social things or own tours of their regions or their builds or whatever, that we also put that in this larger all-encompassing schedule. So not everything is, the bulk of it, I guess the meat of the sandwich is still on the OSCC grid, but we encourage all this stuff. So whether somebody wants to come in who and Lear can talk about that more too, like we've been talking about the ideas of trying to bring in sort of content creators or folks focused on fashion or focused on art or those kind of things, and bringing them in play in the main schedule. We also hope that others will hold events around it, so it becomes this community-wide power through being able to hypergrid around, going to all this stuff and showing off what's the best of Open Simulator.
Show off your stuff.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Well, I'll come to Leah. One thing I remember, I think particularly from last year, although there's two sort of aspects to this, is something that was on the agenda, for example, very particularly last year, I remember, just on the agenda, not the whole thing, was the fact that OpenSim is actually a world that can be used for prototyping. In other words, you can build something in OpenSim and then export it in a way that it could be converted to mesh and put in other worlds that are completely unconnected to the OpenSimulator and the hypergrid. And people working on those other worlds can use OpenSim in different ways, so they don't interconnect these. Unfortunately, there's no underlying protocols that connect all virtual worlds together, but we have seen examples of the way these can sort of interact. And I gather that you are sort of within the remit of the conference, sort of open to extending the discussion, as it were, outside the core of OpenSim and the hypergrid, maybe to include other virtual platforms that have a strong interest or connection with OpenSim. Leah,
Right,
I'll let you answer that. Yeah.
Well, it's what the community is interested in, because we all know there's a future, and now the question is what shapes and drives that future, and it's partly our interests, and it's partly where each of us contributes. And I don't just think of it as the devs' responsibility, although they are our fearless leaders when it comes to the software and how the software behaves, but each of us are participants and active in our goals and our dreams and where we're going. So you've noticed in past years we've had related technologies. We've had some talk about blended realities and about integrated ways of meeting and talking and sharing, etc. And we welcome that, because we're a community. And we want to make sure we support all of the community's interests, not just the ones I'm interested in, which is like education, right? The serious stuff. But I'm wearing right now something from Melody's Garden, and I have to admit there's a richness across OpenSim that is breathtaking, and I'd like to see more of that in the sense of our meta awareness, not just that we have repositories on the web that say, hey, come to these places, but also have this sense of community presence where we make each other aware of how cool this is, right?
Yeah. I mean, communities are a funny thing on OpenSim because they're very prevalent, but because OpenSim, even with the hypergrid, is not a tangible, vast world, communication and things are, not as robust as they would be on, say, a single grid where you can advertise the shops, the communities and stuff. And the hypergrid opens up a lot, but there are, it's not perfect. You can jump from grid to grid, but As we found out earlier, I can't always see my friends on other grids, even though they are online, because I know from the back channel, so there is this kind of stuff going on there. I mean, well, related to this, we'll move on. We'll definitely come back to OpenSim near the end anyway. Related to this, I mean, you take like an old-fashioned semi-game, semi-world like Second Life, and transpose this to a more independent focus of say OpenSim. But in both of those worlds and other worlds, of course, we're reliant quite a lot on other tools, right, that we connect in with our own virtual environment. For example, most people never open up their instant message window in World, and they'll send a text message to a friend, but they don't. They very rarely use the voice facility to call them. They probably can't call them over the hypergrid anyway, unless it's all on a good day. But so oddly enough, people will probably be using things like Skype, although that's going downhill and out of favor, um, to actually make voice calls to each other. So they've got two apps running at once. They've got the virtual environment and maybe any music they're listening to and the ambient sounds are coming from the virtual environment, but they're making their call on Skype. And likewise, when they're not actually logged into the virtual environment, and they could be using something like Radagast to stay logged in without actually being logged in to the full visual world. But on the other hand, they may actually be fully logged out, and they may be using channels on Telegram or Discord or something to keep in touch with the people they know on their grid or across the whole hypergrid while they're not actually logged in. So the future really. OpenSim and the hypergrid for that matter, you know, it is all open, but I think we are ever more aware that we do actually use multiple tools at the same time in order to, keep those interests. I mean, it's the only way, for example, I can speak out from OpenSim and into something like Hyperfidelity or Sciencebase is to use another totally independent channel that isn't actually either world. It's simply a server somewhere that can connect the two worlds together via Discord or something. So there's a lot of that. But one of the things that I've been wanting to talk on this show about for the last couple of weeks, is, as you are aware, is that recently Google announced, literally a couple of weeks ago, that they're closing down Google Plus. Now, Google Plus is there are lots of OpenSim-based groups as well as other virtual world groups and everything else on Google Plus. I personally don't find it the best, easiest, or most manageable of networks to play with, to be honest. But the fact this is closing down has been, I think you could say it's been a particular shock to the OpenSim community because back when, Maria Koloff co-hosted this show with me and things, she was always, Google Plus was always the one she honed in on as the network where there's a lot happening. Other people would tell you it's Facebook, help, and other people would tell you it's Discord. Other people would tell you it's Discord and MeWe. Anywhere that's a messaging service, really. But a lot of people are moving on now. I particularly, I'll mention a few in a moment or two, but there is one that I don't really know this the best, but it's called MeWe, which a lot of people have gone to. And I do find actually that it is almost, it looks more like Facebook, but behaves more like Google Plus, which is a very good compromise, I suppose. I'm still being a bit wary because I'm just beginning to see the first seeds of excessive spam. The people who can't resist going online and publishing the same post to 100 different groups and therefore spamming somebody who's in each of the groups, and that was the Google Plus. But how do you, from your experience, I know that you two both use social media quite a lot over and beyond OpenSim and everything else. So if you again, I'm going to start with Leah because I know that possibly we'll run out of time with you later. what's your take on it? Do you actually see any patterns coming out here, or any preferred places people are going to, or seem to want to congregate, or do you do you think even Google Plus's disappearance will impact things a lot?
Well, certainly it will, because there's quite a bit of activity and broadcasting going on over there. And the advantage of Google Plus is one of the advantages you've mentioned, which is you get the news, but it's not bombarding you, right? And so,
Well, not you, maybe.
well, it's not bombarding me, I have to admit. I
Yeah.
probably only joined maybe 30 groups or so communities. I am rather select. That's why I was laughing, because Joyce is really the social media person. I have accounts, but you may have noticed I tend to talk about events, activities, things that are happening, right? And then I post images while it's live and fresh baked. But I'm not the kind of person to use it for personal reasons. And the reason is I teach web privacy and information accountability. And I'm a very private person. So I believe privacy matters, but I also believe having a community where we can reach out to one another and learn about events or connect, or come visit and see what's going on, the coolness, if you will.
Yeah.
I think that's critical. And so we do need something like that. And whether it's going to be MeWe or something else, I don't know. Joyce is probably the right person for that one.
I must admit, I sort of agree with you, because I'm actually that privacy orientated too. Although it might seem odd that I'm on every network under the sun and fitting here and
But that's
everywhere.
your public self is there. See?
Well, yeah, it's like, for example, when I'm twittering, I do have a backwater Twitter feed. Malburn's writer, he's called on Twitter. He's actually a Second Life avatar, and I still post arts and destinations in Second Life there. No, and, only a few, but often I'm forwarding kind of blogs and things, and people say, well, I tweeted or I put a post up about this event we're doing, and you post it. And I've had to refuse to post, especially in Second Life, event notices. Because, I've been to these events and I know that simulators can't handle more than about 30 people before being problematic. So if there's a big event on, in a way, I don't want to contribute to making it fail by encouraging too many people to go. So what I tend to do is I concentrate on tweeting reviews of events that which is in the aftermath. So if I tweet a review of, say, a nice performer who did a great gig at somebody's shantytown stage in what's it, then they can read a review of the venue and the performer, and they themselves can maybe then look out for other gigs by that performer. I don't want to actively encourage sim crashing and stuff like that. And the bigger the event, the more dangerous that is, really. I mean, obviously, Open Sim conference is different because there's four simulators set up, to hold all that traffic. But if it's a blues club in a square, a little patch on the corner of a sim in Second Life, you're not going to go with that many people. So you can choose to be personal up front, like what I am doing, and constantly put that online, or you can actually be more of a reportage, like I am currently here and this is what's happening. Or you can be reflective, and that is, reportage in the past tense, reviews of what's happened. So what you're saying there really is that you're quite happy to report it somewhere you're at, where something interesting is going on, and you're probably quite happy about posting something in reflection, because obviously maybe when you're teaching, that is an exercise in reflection on some occasions. So yeah, I kind of agree with that. It's the different ways we approach things, and
like
I
you're
think my
saying,
mistake. Sorry, yeah.
Beyond the announcement, the event is currently happening, there's also this notion about archiving and curating our memories. And I think of this like microblogging, so there's little pieces of Lear everywhere, and the things she's enjoyed, they're not all aggregated into a central area. They're part of a shared experience with people in a variety of different media. And that's what I love, really.
The only risk to that isn't the cautionary tale to things. I mean, and Google obviously is a big entity, and they're still sunsetting. I mean, they do this a lot with we're not going to serve this product anymore, but we see this a lot even with. There are so many social media products that have kind of gone the wayside over the years, and I think that's you always have to weigh this risk of like in the little bits of yourself that you put in various places, like how much like value do you want that will still continue to be there years later, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that gets down to this, like if you worry about permanence, ultimately you're going to have to self-host it, right? Like because anything can go away. The Google Plus thing leaving, I mean, it's there's certainly there's kind of multi-tiers to it. Like on my end, the social media tools, because between the virtual world environments and doing sort of projects within, and also using networking and connecting them back out to the real world. I mean, for me, that goes back to even when I worked for the New York City educational nonprofit Global Kids. I mean, they were getting funding from MacArthur Foundation, all focused around digital media learning online. So there was definitely this big mix between merging, various social media spaces, online and offline. So as all these social media tools were emerging, and I had to be working with them, I also always had that aspect of this awareness of having to realize like this stuff is all out there publicly, and as you said, it's almost like you're a politician. You have to kind of come up with, here's my public persona, and this is what I'm going with.
Personally, I find it more difficult than that. If I can intervene, it's
sure, yeah.
Long before I was in virtual worlds, for example, I was probably I know for a fact I was just in Twitter because I came to Second Life, as it were, and originally through Twitter, and we had a Twitter group there, which was my first experience in there. But I think I was in the Fastball before that, and the connections. The perfect example of something you couldn't rely on was MySpace, because all my connections with music, art, and stuff like that were following people on MySpace and posting to MySpace. And it was everything was centered about my page and my links from there. It was like your main page was a blog, and you had your blog roll, and it linked out. But it just went like that.
Yep.
And although it's still around,
and Live Journal and 6 Degrees and all those early ones, they all had. Yeah.
But Facebook, I guess, because it was the first, I wasn't thinking of an avatar personality or anything. And in fact, when I got this avatar personality, I mean, it's always been me, though no hiding the name or even the similarities to the real bloke, But it was for friends. I was posting things a bit about politics, a bit about art, and a bit about music. Those were my core interests that I was reflecting as the real person on Facebook, if you like. There was very little hints to anything to do with virtual reality or virtual worlds, except where it's slightly overlapped with art. And that's continued to be the case. So, old friends and things that follow me on Facebook are really, catching the breadth of what they might remember of me, from
prior to virtual
centuries ago. Yeah. So although Facebook's insidious, it's almost the closest to the real me. But the other thing I do, I suppose it's precautionary in a way, is Twitter, for example. After the first few months, when there was a group of us getting together who were interested in the same things, we suddenly thought, well, rather than throw messages back and forth on Twitter, why don't we just go into Second Life and meet in a cabin? Because there are only a few of us, So we set up in Second Life, and a whole lot of things came out of that. The actual Twitter meets only lasted a few months, I think. But it was the birthplace of things like metanomics or metaverse, as it was.
All that podcasting community that came in World too.
Nick Wilson and things very pivotal there. But as the virtual world replaced the meeting spot of Twitter, right? Because if I want to meet people, I meet them in the cabin in OpenSim now, right? We'll choose to meet, right? But Twitter became a broadcasting medium for me, a bit like a newspaper, except I'm aggregating news. So I just I don't spit out anything of myself into Twitter. I'm spitting out links which are very strictly, within my frame of reference, human computer interfacing by and large. Um, Pros and cons of different things, but they really are just links. It's like the tipster thing, but it's not designed to be reflective of my personality in any way. It's very, a lot of people say to, "Oh, you're Mal Burns. I thought you were a robot."
Yeah, yeah.
I think because of the way
I considered that at the beginning too for a while. I was like,
yeah, because of the way I manage it and do it. I think that
Yeah.
this is straightforward business. Find links, shove them out there, get on to the next one.
Yeah.
This is not
Yeah.
a person; it's a broadcast machine. But then again, I like collecting pictures and stuff, which is like the halfway between Facebook and Twitter. So like you were saying, Joyce, I go to Pinterest, and I just keep categories of pictures on Pinterest, and I don't have to download them or anything. You just hijack them from the sites they're on, and they're hot linked into Pinterest. So, which is the way I always used to do things anyway. And as long as Pinterest is around, I can go there and look at all my boards and look them all up. So. All those things, right, are very different functions, and the same with LinkedIn. I hardly ever use LinkedIn at all, and my tweets, my Mal Burns tweets, tend to go to LinkedIn automatically, so they know I'm still alive. But it was always just a business and a work thing for me. And since I'm now retired, it's not as though I'm going to LinkedIn and I want to click on job offers and stuff. So that was just a complete different avenue. It was the opposite of Facebook, really. LinkedIn was my professional self, whereas Facebook was my personal self, and Twitter was my robot self. But there'd be so many other networks in between,
Although I
Google
still
Plus.
I do have things bleed in through LinkedIn sometimes, like just even recently. I had somebody contact me like, would you be willing to come to this event and, cover it as a, or Twitter about it or blog about it or whatever, There's, I think because our interests and what we're always talking about are within that technology sphere, that sometimes people will reach out to that.
Yeah, I mean, when I go to LinkedIn, actually, I sort of I'll find the icon somewhere and see that there's like 100 messages.
Oh yes.
And I'll go in and check up, but I rarely respond to many of them now. But yeah, I mean, that really is because you like me have probably got a lot of followers and they're anxious to get to you for
for those kind of things.
To try and promote their particular thing or whatever.
Yeah, or their event or
yeah, and that's the when you do big public feeds, that's the trap you fall into. Everybody knows you and everybody targets you with their press releases and can you come to this and can you promote that? And by the way, while I'm on air, after this show is over, this is the final hours of Avatar Fest. I mean the actual regions. There's a DJ party is closing it at about 4 p.m. Pacific time, I think. And I know that because somebody just IM'd me and said, "Can I promote this fat?"
There you go. Are they watching?
Yeah, no. This actually was earlier, but no, it's handheld actually. But he may be watching. No, I don't know. He's logged in World.
Hello, handheld.
He's probably busy. He's probably busy running the last day of Avatar Fest. So.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. I mean, I get posts. There is somebody in Virtual Belfast, for example, who will post me in about 20 different channels whilst this show is on. And when I go off air, I will be busy closing all those windows because I really don't need to be told 20 times while I'm broadcasting that the weekly event in Virtual Belfast is happening. And it's not, it's not I mean, sure, everybody from the hypergrid is welcome to it, but it's not like a focused hypergrid event. It's a local event that anybody on the hypergrid can come to. And
That's cool.
If I promoted all those, I've only got to look at my Discord channel, which now has even more events pouring into it. There's plenty of stuff happening there,
That's great.
But I'm not going to tweet every one of them.
we didn't mention it before, but before we go, since we sort of touched back up on the hypergrid stuff, if folks do want to submit a proposal or find out more about Open Simulator, you can go to conference.opensimulator.org. So just to make you sure to throw that out there.
All right, I will
Put that in the links.
if James hasn't already done it, I'll suggest he puts that address into the third for a couple of minutes while we're talking.
Yeah, certainly. So that just so they folks know where to go for that, and certainly yes, submit a proposal. Sign up to volunteer. Any of that stuff would be great. I mean, our hope is that it is sort of a slice of the broad Open Simulator community as much as it can be. So.
Now, of course, there's a whole linking process going on here. We'll round up with Open Simulator again, but there's a whole linking process going on here too, which joins our two subjects together, and that is that the very act of promoting.
Goes out to social networks.
Being on this show, of course, the ultimate. Who needs any other promotion? You've been on Inworld Review, but even
that will get relinked out to places. And
of course, but just supposing nobody comes across this program, boo-hoo. It is integral to promoting anything like this that you are tapping into all this social media, and I guess actually both of you should comment on this. Understanding it, you heard me rabbiting on about how I use one for one thing, one for the other, but if you're promoting an event like the conference coming up, do you promote it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest even, and or Google Plus and MeWe, which is one of the successes we've talked about? The
answer is yes.
My question wasn't a yes or no answer.
I know.
You preempted me. Do you perceive a different strategy for each of these elements of social media? Because some are really professional media, which is networking. Other is strictly social. And other is strictly social in the context of the hypergrid or OpenSim. So, the message you put across is not always the same in every medium, is it?
Yeah.
I mean, if you advertise in just let's be blunt, if you advertise in a right-wing newspaper and you also advertise in the left-wing newspaper, I think the advert is probably going to be slightly different depending on the medium. So, do you find that in promoting a conference and stuff, you need to pitch it a bit differently in these different media?
Certainly. So first off, I mean, I think with any of the social media, there are always, not all social media. I mean, obviously Twitter is pretty face forward in the fact that, and like you, I do have some conversational stuff that's going on. And in the earlier days of Twitter, there used to be much more conversational stuff going on, I think. But I use it a lot more as a broadcasting out and, retweeting folks that are in that same sphere and kind of keeping within a topical range and doing that. So certainly, I think there's more room to broadcast out different things on there is on Twitter. So that it has less sub-channel. There's no sub-channels per se outside of using hashtags and things like that. When you're looking at things like, example like a LinkedIn, there are LinkedIn groups, and depending upon, some of them are still, prolific, posting places. And so you can find groups that are talking about similar things. Like there certainly are some, various things like on the educational side, there's like the International Society of Technology and Education, ESD groups, like they're always interested in that. So, I can post about something in the virtual worlds in regards to an ISTE group, right?
But on LinkedIn? No.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, I get comments there. I do.
I can see the point here because it's going back to the call for proposals, for example.
Yeah.
Now, many of the people who actually go do a 20-minute session or be on panels, right,
yes.
are what you might call professional people, by and large. Not all, but
not all. Yeah.
So, maybe academics as well. A lot of those, I suspect, will be more present on LinkedIn than they'll ever be on Facebook.
Yeah, and there's still, I think there's a certain amount of there's actually a machinima group in LinkedIn, right? Like, I think you have to do some searching for these things and know that you can, and I think the key is to your thing is do some pre-searching in any particular social network to find those groups that are interested in topics that are similar to what you're trying to promote. And then you still have to kind of sort of edit that message a little bit depending upon who you're talking out to.
Joyce, I'm
Sure.
looking at the ISTE LinkedIn. I've been a leader with various ISTE
I haven't posted
either
there in a bit,
special
though, but-
interest groups or professional
Yeah.
learning networks since 2006. And the ISTE group is a London publishing group that has nothing to do with ISTE that we talk about in
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm using that as a example, but I don't
Okay.
know.
So it was news to me that we had a group there because I was like, really?
Yeah, no,
But
I'll
anyway,
have to look in my
I don't
own
mean to steal
LinkedIn.
your thunder, but I was like, wow, I'm missing out on something. It's been like 12 years. But
Yeah,
but
I know there is an
ISTE,
EDUCAUSE group there because I've
Yeah,
posted to that.
there
And
is.
there's a couple interesting things. There's a digital Hollywood group, which as much as you might think it's like, what is that about? Some of
That's
this
cool.
some of this technology, machinima, storytelling, those things you could post it out to them. Like,
Sure.
I think you always kind of have to, and I'd have to pull up LinkedIn to tell you what my particular groups might be, but search for those groups and then, craft your message throughout that. That's on the LinkedIn thing. I mean, Facebook, there's groups and pages for everything. So again, that comes down to searching and finding the right things. I mean, you probably have your own page set up if you've got your own stuff or your own profile, and you can post whatever you think is comfortable within those means there. But yeah, there definitely is tweaking depending upon medium, and who you're talking to in any given never given group or audience or that kind of thing. Yeah, the Google, we were talking about Google Plus before. There were the Google Plus thing, and Google Plus itself going away is kind of multi-tiered in a way, right? Because there's the social network part of it that we're all talking about. That when that goes, any of the community groups, which is kind of like the group format in Google Plus, those will go. Any of our kind of profiles, there may be still a way to. I mean, I think it's still very much up in the air what exactly. Like
I mean, well, there's two things here. One, it's not going to go away, and over a course of about 10 months, so it's not like
August. I think next August or
a
something.
major collapse.
Yeah.
And secondly, they do advertise links and stuff where you can go and download all the data Google have on you, so you won't lose. If you want to archive all that stuff for your own purposes, you can.
You can archive your own content, so you can archive and actually and I was sharing a link before this to like a Pinterest board I've been collecting in regards to going beyond, but there is an archive utility, and you can archive out all. It's called takeout.google.com, so takeout.google.com. And so, but it's only your content. So even if, say, you have a community. Right now, they haven't. I mean, it's still early days with what this means exactly with Google Plus shutting down. And yes, to your point, it'll probably be in August when it actually finally sunsets, but next August. But there's no good way to get all the content out of your particular group. So you could get your content out of it, but you can't get anybody else. So if, say, people collectively put photos in together and posts in together, and
you only see what you contribute.
You'll only be able to get your own, right? No. So if you're trying to preserve a community and push that content over to somewhere else, that's still up in the air on if that's even going to ever be possible beyond getting your own stuff out. The other tough thing about Google Plus going is that it's interconnected with YouTube comments, it's interconnected with bloggers' comments, it's interconnected because they made it so pervasive. Remember, it wasn't that way. There were sort of separate silos of all that stuff initially, and then to try to push Google Plus, they integrated into all their products in those kind of social ways.
Well, it's more than that. I mean, Google integrate everything they own together. That is policy. So it's not like.
But the Plus stuff
with Google Plus just to benefit Plus, so the other way around. But the one thing I've always had a problem with Google Plus is I will come across a post. Now, I've initially with Google Plus, I think anybody who wanted to friend me personally, I said, I'll maybe not follow you, but you can friend me and follow me. And then there would be groups that I actively joined, and so I get all the members of those groups posting, and before I know it, I'm getting far too much, and I try and cull some of it in terms of visuals. So maybe I only see the things I actively follow, but then I'm missing things that I friended but didn't follow. If you see what I mean, it's complex. But more to the
Yep,
point,
yep, yep.
I've got Google Plus open on the machine at the back of me here now, and there's I don't know, some woman with wearing an avatar fashion costume,
Hmm.
and it's basically the window in Google Plus is promoting their latest blog post, which is a fashionista thing that I really don't want. I don't know why I'm even seeing it. But let's say I did want to tweet that link. I can't. Well, everything I do in Google is all the right click menus to, tweet or things like that are all grayed out. Google
Yeah.
is in lockdown and it won't connect to the multiplex of networks. So in a way, I've never really used Google that much because I can't I can't tweet out of Google into Twitter, or I
Yeah,
can't
you can
post from
pull links, but it
Google.
isn't always. It
Yeah,
isn't.
it's
Mileage
very
varies depending on.
yeah.
Yeah.
I would actually have to open the link in Google Plus, then copy out the link, and then paste it into wherever I'm sending
Hmm.
it. And
Hmm.
and since Google Plus stuff often opens up its own inbuilt browser, then the facilities you would get in your normal browser aren't there. Little
Yeah,
things.
yeah. It would link.
They try and
Yeah. No,
trap you into Chrome and stuff like that. And
well,
yeah,
ultimately, I think all you know all these
let
social networks have their point of view on what their
yeah.
motivations.
I'm going to stop moaning a bit here and to move on. James, who looking at the background here very quietly, your thoughts on all this, both the diaspora from Google or the alternatives, and any comments from you on the OSCE thing for that matter?
Nothing really in particular, other than I recall seeing in some discussion somewhere that somebody chimed in that Google had the intention of replacing Google Plus or providing new tools that are similar in some way to Google Plus. And this time frame of August, who knows what might
Yeah,
come to pass, right?
Yeah. And
yeah.
actually,
Lots can happen.
remember Google Plus. They had something that predated Google Plus. I forget what it was, but it wasn't their original
Hmm.
social network. It was something that came in between, and they had a nice. Oh God, it was something like a stream or something. It was great. It was nifty, although it was very slow. It probably wouldn't be it now because things have speeded up.
Right.
But it just went, and Google Plus then popped up to replace it. And they've done the same with Hangouts. Hangouts is no longer the phone service. Hangouts is now. Um, it's become more like a messaging system rather than where the original Hangouts was like a bit like a YouTube, wasn't it?
Or a Skype,
Format
maybe.
and
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
and
kind of
it's
like a
now
video conferencing sharing thing, and it still does that. Hangouts
yeah,
Still does
still does
phone,
that.
right?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So
What I think what the breakdown of some degrees like and again there's lots of who knows how this will all come out in the wash in the end, but like
mm.
how this affects like Google Live on Air because Google Plus was connected to that, and Hangouts can be connected to that, and you know.
Well,
Um,
Hangouts. There's two Hangouts anyway now. I mean, the original Hangouts is now Hangouts for Business, which is a paid thing, and it's only the basic Hangouts that has been changed into more of a. It's
yeah,
almost like a Google
which
Talk thing. But
by the
anyway,
way has
that's
been
that we don't post to Hangouts basically, so it's not a
yeah
posting medium. So
no
um, I know
which
in the background we've been, discussing for OpenSim, what happens if Skype goes haywire in the next couple of months, or what happens if this goes and this goes, and we think of all the mechanics of the conference. Of
yeah
course, both
yeah
James and I are tangibly involved in part of what you're doing. And so we got to be aware. How do we do audio if we don't have Skype and nobody else has got a ubiquitous alternative? And
mhm mhm
just little technical things that don't affect the whole thing, but maybe a bit of it.
yeah
Um,
certainly yeah certainly
Right, so I know. Well, we've probably got 5 or 10 minutes. Yes, I know Leah has to leap shortly, so I will try and I'm trying to try and round off the program before she has to leave. Then we can all leave in a dignified fashion, like a proper TV show where we all sit here to the end and don't go rushing off stage.
yes yes
But don't forget to submit a proposal.
yes
We want to
Yeah.
hear from you. Don't think you have to be a formal speaker or you can always have your peeps come with you, all your friends
And
speak as a panel. Yeah, go ahead.
Have we, before I go further, have we, James, had any questions or comments in the live channel by any chance?
Nope, no comments today.
No, they're all right. They're all just laid back today. Fair enough.
They're
It varies.
partying.
It varies from
I
week to week. um,
I would also
yeah.
encourage to Lear's point,
Mm.
also feel free that can you can actually sort of show and tell too during those presentations. I think some of the best presentations we have had have been things that are dynamic, when we had a panel about bots and Fred Fredericks was had bots up there and interacting and other people, when we have kayaker who talks about physics and he's throwing arrows into the audience and or little mini performances or all kinds of things, so you
Love it.
don't even
Well,
feel
I was just going to move into that actually.
Yeah.
As part of the finale, and that is, obviously we've all got particular highlights of particular areas, but just to demonstrate, in the call for proposals, the variety of stuff we have actually had last year and the year before, and over various years, we've had, we've had, virtual theatre groups. And other kinds of performers on stage who initially you wouldn't think of, as the more serious side of things. But then, the guy throwing all the stuff around that you mentioned, and also there was another one recently, where we were watching something very silly like the arrows flying around. Right.
Plus, I love
but everybody, but
Strange.
it wasn't actually silly because the talk, right, was, gosh, I could use that script for A, B, C, D,
Right.
So, you might look at arrows floating around at hitting targets as something fairly frivolous, but then it suddenly go click. Hang on, I can remaster that script for something very, very serious. So the examples are there too, and the other thing that's happening now is that people can build in OpenSim and they can export OER files and things and take them to places like Sciencebase, which is also available on the web, by the way, though it's a different platform. So, the idea is you use OpenSim to build because it's easy. But also we now have Cyber Lounge, we have 3D Web Worlds, and we have a virtual non-profits website, which is Selby's thing. So we now got 3 totally new platforms that are actually on the web, but all of them use the same metaphors for building that we already use in OpenSim. So you can build in OpenSim and take that content to the web. So the even if the hypergrid is stagnant, OpenSim hasn't grown or shrunk or anything else, you can look to these other things that originate from OpenSim to see that it is moving outward. In odd ways, shall we say?
This interconnection, between with the content being able to go. And Pathfinder, John Lester, did a presentation, a workshop-y kind of a quick workshop a couple of years ago, specifically on that, right? Like the idea of taking your content wherever you go, So that's the other thing I think. If you've got an interesting, we've had folks present on. VR viewers in regards to virtual worlds. We've had, various tech tools that focus on there. So that's another piece too, that if you've got something that you want to talk about that relates to those things, submit that too. It doesn't have to be, to Mal's point, it can be this interconnection that maybe you're doing work that's straddling or bringing content back and forth between 2 different virtual world VR spaces. And that's appropriate too, to put in a proposal and show that off, tell people what you're doing and how to do it. I think that's useful. So many people using Open Simulator are content creators, so they're also interested in that.
And it's the old adage, really, isn't it? But if you don't try, in other words, if you don't submit, you know, it's better to submit and be refused. You'll probably get a polite refusal if you need to be refused. Maybe you won't be. I don't know, but better to do it than not. You know, you may have built a house with lots of automation or something that you are proud of on your own little corner of the hyperverse.
Yep,
And
that
you think,
nobody knows about.
why would I submit that? But why not? Maybe you've done
Yep.
stuff that nobody else has done, so it can't hurt to try. You know, put your pitch in. You know.
Yep. And we're also kind of new this year too. Speaking about little objects that you might have in your space, or we're putting out a proposal. We're going to allow people to submit, kind of almost have like a public art sort of that's sprinkled throughout the OSCC space. So if you're interested in having that, having your work sort of shown in that way. I mean, we're looking small scale. I think it was like 10 by 10 or 5 by 5.
5 by 5.
Wait, I laugh when you said about small objects. I was just visualizing, you know, a prize for the cutest small object in the metaverse.
Oh yeah. There'll probably be some like ring or something.
Yeah, here's my modified brim.
There you go. Yes. What can you do with one prim? We want to see it. No.
You can do a lot, actually. You can do a lot about it. Yeah. No two prims are alike once they've been fiddled with.
Yes, very true. So you know, that's another thing too. Another way that you can kind of get involved if you have like an art project, or sort of an art interesting, you know, object that you've worked on too. We're going to be putting in a submission for folks to be able to take part in that way too, by just having their work shown about the grid, the regions. But certainly, yes. If there's anything that you think you might want to present on, also community things, right? Like if you are doing role play in the space, or if you're leading a community group, even those things are things that are important and useful things to talk about. You know, we brought up the whole, even, you know, some of the topics like fashion and art. But if you're running a grid, if you're, you know, all those kind of things, those are also very important parts. And when Mal was talking about before, you know, the proposals, you know, most of the time, most of the stuff that gets presented is pretty spot on within the range of what we're looking for. So we really have a low kind of turn away rate for folks, you know, like it's only if it's either we're running out of space completely and it's been submitted much later, or it's something so not, there's no connection point to Open Simulator at all, not even in a technology relation sort of thing. You know, and we try too. Sometimes if we get several people, like say on the community aspect of things, say, you know, you're running a particular type of community, and somebody else submits something that's running another particular type of community. If we see like a theme popping up, we'll group those folks together and we'll kind of, you know, create a little mini panel, and that's another way that it's, you know, a little less daunting maybe because you're not doing it alone. And we encourage other folks too. Like if you think, well, I want to get a few people together that all run their own various grids, and we all want to talk about that, then, you know, bring that too. You know, there's lots of options on how to
and even if you're working on social networks that are about the metaverse,
blogging the metaverse.
I suddenly realised, you know, there will be some other stuff that comes up near the date, but the other thing as well as the proposals call is that, you know, we are already at this stage looking for volunteers.
Oh yes,
you know,
yes,
you may be a host who blabbers your mouth off like me for 30 seconds, introducing somebody on stage. You just may be a moderator who works behind the scenes, making a speaker feel comfortable, or you may just fancy being what we call the greeter, which is mean you get dumped somewhere and you just say hello to everybody and point them in the right direction if you can remember which direction it's in. You know. So that's all stuff. Now, before we leave the social media
streamers,
stuff,
of course, and streamers and builders.
Yes, if you're adept at video streaming, of course.
And we'll train folks for the video streaming. So if you want to learn a new skill and you've got a good enough bandwidth and computer, we'll train you.
Yeah. So volunteers for everything, really, even the things you can't think of. If you fancy volunteering for something you don't know whether we need a volunteer for, offer it anyway.
Yeah.
You might get it. Now, before we start closing, we've mentioned in brief the Google Plus thing. There are two, well, it's three really. Um, People started moving from, there is a site called
Hmm.
diaspora.com, I believe it is, and there's a subsite there called Pluspora, the plus being Google Plus. So there's a diaspora for Google Plus at pluspora.com. I'm there. There's not much happening yet, but you can look me up and friend me, I guess, or whatever. The main one, which it almost seems to be a duplicate of Google Plus already. I get the feeling people have taken their posts to Google Plus, copying them to their clipboard and sending them to MeWe simultaneously. It's a site called MeWe, and it's the closest I've come to the Google Plus. It looks more like Facebook, but it
Hmm.
it
Yeah.
behaves very, very much like Google Plus with groups, chats, and home.
It's even more walled garden though that you can't share those links out. So
not at the moment, but
yeah,
it's also much more secure and
yeah, it's much more focused around privacy.
yeah.
So those it's yeah.
Yeah, now you I know are in there already, Joyce, but
Yeah.
I
I
have a
just
group.
friended you.
Yeah,
Woohoo.
I have a group called MetaWorld there for us. I've also published. It's not a group; it's just an event. But I've put up an event site for the OSCC there as well, which OpenSim Community Conference. Right? Yes. Oh no, Sunbeam liking it. Um, yeah, you look for OpenSim Community Conference 2018, and you'll find that that's listed as an event. All that's there really at the moment are people joining it and the dates of the conference. But when I can actually transfer the group or the event to Joyce or something if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
So look out for that, because that will obviously be another place for promoting its stuff. And the third place, of course, is Discord. Now, many OpenSim grids on the hypergrid do actually these days, especially since it's become better known, have their own Discord servers, and I usually link to those in a sort of service section. But I and Pathfinder and technically Thursday started, well, it's under my name, Hypergrid Explorers and Creators Discord, and this is specifically hypergrid wide. I don't want, there's a channel for for individual grids if they want to use it, but they're welcome to set up their own server, as many grids who are anxious to push themselves are doing. But this server is designed to be hypergrid wide. I'm not running any public grid. I've got no vested interest except promoting the hypergrid as a whole. So you can find that on Discord, Hypergrid of Explorers and Creators club. And also, once you've got used to using Discord, you automatically get your own server whether you need it or not. It's the top bit is like a personal an alternative to Skype for you. We use it for recording this show, for example. And the lower bit is all sorts of servers that are, in a way, behave a bit like old-fashioned IRC channels, except you've got pictures.
Yeah, it's like Skype and IRC and
sort of combined together.
Sort of combined, yeah.
And you can also make bots and embed things, and there's a lot of potential there. Even I'm still exploring, when I find the time. And personally, I would say Discord is my refuge from Google Plus, followed by MeWe, followed by Pluspora.
Yeah.
So go figure. Those are my three choices. I don't know whether any of you've got any other.
There's certainly like in my like sort of looking around at this whole Google Plus alternatives. There's another one similar to Discord called Movim, MOVIM. It's another kind of more messaging-y channels sort of thing. And then Diaspora, as you mentioned. There's a few others in that niche. Like Diaspora is interesting because it's an open,
how did you spell that one? Morphin or something?
MOVIM. So
MOVIM. Just looking at that
now. But it looks, if you look at it, it looks a whole lot like Discord, right? And Diaspora, as you mentioned, it was set up to be originally a decentralized, open source, variant to Facebook, right?
Right.
And even I was part of like kind of the early Kickstarters for Diaspora, so I have my little Diaspora sticker that's sitting on the wall in front of
Oh.
me. Yeah, and you know, it kind of kicked off a lot of this sort of the idea of that decentralized, you know, network of like a social network, and there are others in that space too. There's like that are this idea of decentralized, meaning you host kind of in the way that High Fidelity is, right? Like as virtual world, it's sort of that, but in a social
Yeah.
network, like where you're hosting your own resources and your own things on your own side, and then it's interconnecting with folks through that, you know, the shared infrastructure of the platform to kind of connect you. But Diaspora, then there's Friendica,
Oh, no,
Frien.
yes, that was the other one I saw you mention.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've forgotten that
Friendica.
one.
There's another one called Hubzilla, Bzilla, like Godzilla, but Hubzilla. And then and then there's speaking of other little dinosaurs, there's also Mastodon,
Ah,
Mastodon, I think
I,
it's
uh,
dot
I,
clod.
I do
Yeah.
use Mastodon, but that's more like another Twitter than a
Yeah, it's
social
sort of
network.
somewhere in that
Yeah.
more
You,
Discordy kind
I've
of,
got, I've got,
you know.
I've got a button that tweets. Well, I've got 3 buttons that do tweets, but I got one button that does a toot, and the toot is Mastodon.
Yeah. Mastodon. It reminds me. It looks.
Tooted.
It's sort of a little like. It also probably falls closer to the IRC Discord model of
Yeah,
things. You
yeah.
know. Yeah.
I've
Um,
actually just googled moving and it can't find it.
oh, let me get you a linky.
MOVIN.
Yeah. I had it up just a second ago, and now I have to. Of course, I think I have the
Uh,
the
it,
YouTube video.
Actually, if you type it into Discord, that will help. It's on the
Yeah,
machine,
I
the
will.
machine where my web is.
And I've been compiling again some of these resources on my Pinterest. You know, with that
Yeah.
idea of like others, we're all in this space that in the next 10 months we're going to have to figure out our strategies to move. Especially, I think there's that personal strategy of like where are you going to go to connect with folks, and then for those of us who run communities, whether they're for events or like, you know, there's the whole nonprofit commons, which is like more of a social good focused community that I help manage. Like, you know, worrying about your community, you know, whether that be like, you know, your open simulator, you know, grid users, your particular community or something else. There's that issue too. Like, how do you provide for your community if they've been talking in G plus for all these years and then move them over, you know?
Yeah. Well, actually, really, all it takes is an admin or somebody who knows what's going on to, like with MeWe. I mean, that, you know, everybody's just taken their Google Plus group and ported it over and emailed all everybody in the old group at Google Plus saying, continue to join it. So it seems to be happening fairly naturally.
Yeah.
What about you, Leah?
So,
Before I'm looking at the time, I know Leah's probably beginning to get itchy. Any suggestions from you, Leah, as well as what Joyce has just mentioned about locations and, you know, networking and stuff?
You know what I'd like to see? I'm wondering if at the OSCC we don't need to have a community meeting where we talk about our preferences and then gather ideas from everyone, because we only know what we know, right? What we're exposed to. And it's quite possible that there are little pockets out there that we're not aware of that would be ideal. So I think we should start a conversation at the conference, you know.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
And possibly the OSCC grid, which is the conference basically, could start a Discord server for that particular grid, which a lot of other grids have done. And the great thing is they can be cross-posted. So I see something in Inworld's Discord server and I paste it across to mine and things like that. So there's a lot of possibilities there. And talking of which, you know, I told you that, you know, I need to apologize if I did sound a bit mean on the guy in virtual Belfast.
Oh no, you're not mean, and I love Belfast.
Yeah,
I'm just the devil's advocate, right?
Yeah. Okay. Well, the address is the hypergrid address is hoplogin.osgrid.org/maritime-club-Belfast. And if you want these coordinates 26, 26, 37, you can get them, because starting at 2 p.m. Pacific time, which is maybe 45 minutes from
Mhm.
now,
Mhm.
you can see the wonderful Celtic maiden warrior Lancaster
Woohoo.
performing. So just to prove there's something always happening, I cull the thing from the latest message. I'm not going to sit
Wonderful.
here going back for an hour's worth of other
Yeah, yeah.
locations, but an example, not not everything is scattered around here like you might think. The messages are popping up in real time while we're
Yeah,
talking.
and actually, Maritime Club often has a social event that they.
As part of the conference.
Yes, right after the main presentation sort of end, and that's the great thing too. Like, even if you don't want to present at the as part of the formal conference part that'll be in the OSCC grid, like we encourage you. We have
Oh,
the
move in.
forms up too. Move in, yes.
Yeah, I thought you said move in, as in moving
No,
out. That's okay.
and obviously, it's an EU thing, so that kind of throws .eu. Um,
Yeah, move IN.
but
Yeah.
we encourage folks to like host those events. So even if you want to, throw open the doors to your region and to your grid and host an event that other, it's a great way. Because we get such a distributed, like folks from all over, there'll be a lot of local accounts that are created on the OSCC grid itself. But then there are a lot of people that just hypergrade in from the various grids that are out there in Open Simulator. So it's a nice way to have people kind of visit your regions. I mean, of course, you also have, you have to be prepared that you could have 20 folks show up at your door, at least, But if you think you are willing to try it, it's another great way too to like take part in OSCC is by hosting something on your thing. And it could be like, hey, we've got a gallery thing going on, a performance, a tour, whatever.
I have one question. I think I probably know
Sure.
the answer myself, but I've just remembered it. Obviously, when this conference is on, you've got the dates. There'll be an agenda appearing. The build-up is, it's the beginning of December, so it's 6 weeks away at most.
Yep.
Obviously, it is a conference where you can just hypergrid in and attend events, but traditionally, you can apply for tickets, can't you, as well?
You can, yeah.
It gives you a priority seating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we do like a Kickstarter kind of like model, right? Like in essence, we have, you certainly could come and just hypergrid in and, no worries about any, you can kind of come into that. We also do, if you want an account created on the grid itself, you can, you can register, and their registration is free, but then there are also these sort of additional levels if you want, like say perks. Like we have a whole expo region where there's like it's parceled off into all these things. There's like 5 regions, and it's like this giant kind of community-wide expo. And usually it's at a $50 US dollar kind of range. You would get a space there and be this community sponsor, and that stays up all year. So in some ways it's having like a little outpost of your things, and we get a lot of traffic and a lot of touring around in there. So and then that money goes to help kind of further keep these events going on, and it's all under where Avacon is kind of the kind of overarching entity. Anything that you can contribute because of OSCC is at least tax deductible in the U.S. Unfortunately, tax deduction laws aren't international in that way, but so those there's that sort of thing. So people can kind of contribute to get sort of either special VIP things, or just because that they want to help contribute, or or they want a T-shirt, an actual physical T-shirt, or they want to have a virtual space in the expo space. So there are things like that are also options, but you can just register for a free. You can register formally if you just want a local account created for you on the grid. Otherwise, you can just hypergrid in during. That's another option as well. So.
Right. Okay, well, I'm sure we will no doubt hear more about this as we get closer to time. I'll probably have you both and all others on.
Yeah, once we have a schedule
in the week or so before, when we actually know what all the agenda is and everything, and we can discuss that as well. So, everybody, if you want to volunteer, do it. Call for proposals, whatever you can think of, send it in. and everything the two of them said over the last hour. Okay, final thoughts from you, James?
No, no. It's
No.
I'm looking forward to the whole process again. The preparation, and then the video streaming and the conference presentations themselves. It's definitely a highlight of the year.
Highlight of the year, and the day after you're cursing because you've got to go back to work.
Right.
Not like everybody else, although it is close enough to the holiday that you might get out of it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave it a closed down bit sort of thing. I'd like to thank all my guests. Now, oh no, she's unmuted again, so that's wonderful. First of all, I
Yes.
will thank Leah Lobo so that she can happily mute, if not vanish, at the moment's notice. Thank you for staying with us, Leah. I know you've gone over time a bit, but great
It's wonderful.
talking to you. Always is. Yeah, so thank you. And of course, thank you to James, who's been running all the cameras, multitasking, and everything else.
Absolutely.
And thank you to Rhiannon Chatnoir, also known as Joyce Besson-Gore.
Yes, yeah. I thanks for having us. I mean, and thank all of the three of you too for helping it for OSCC. That's much appreciated as well, of course. So,
I love that. You thank the three of us, and I thank both of you.
There you go. Thanks all the way around. It's like a round of
We're thankful.
Indeed.
Yes. And conference.opensimulator.org. That's my only, go there.
Keep it on screen. Yeah.
Or look for me on Twitter. I'm tweeting about it.
Oh,
wonderful.
Yes.
Watch your networks, folks.
At Lear Lobo.
Check out
Yeah.
Discord. Check out these new ones, Discord and MeWe, if you're not already on them, for example.
Yeah.
Snoop around. Always a good idea to snoop around, see what's
Yes,
happening.
being adventurous is definitely, I think, the key.
Yeah. The days. Yes. Okay, well, we're out of here. So all it remains for me to say is, wish you all a very good morning, or a very good afternoon, or good evening, or indeed a good tomorrow, depending on wherever and whenever you are. And we'll see you next week, or soon at least.